sometimes there means some sacrifice that has to go with that, which is a bit challenging. When I talk to my kids today who are 24 and 21, they don't understand this sacrifice thing.
Welcome to the Sinclair podcast, where we share real-world experiences, wisdom, and the honest struggles of entrepreneurs to help you navigate and scale your business with confidence.
Wade Stayzer here in person on my podcast.
Thank you.
Check. It's on the list.
Yeah, it took a long time. Thank you for your patience. You've been very understanding.
There's been some uncertainty in the world for all of us, and I'm sure in the world of credit unions as well. So.
Any financial institution, they're referring to it now as taco trade. Did you know it's called taco trade?
Explain, please.
Trump always chickens out. That's the latest taco trade. But just on that, you've got to look for silver lining in this, and the big silver lining is that I think we as Canadians now have finally gotten off our ass and are going to do something about our own country and be faithful and patriotic and do the stuff that we should to develop an economy within the country, which will serve our kids very, very well into the future. But yeah, it's been a really challenging time to try and navigate what is certain one day and uncertain the next. And
yeah, it's been challenging, and I'll put my entrepreneurial hat on. What are some of the things that you're seeing? Because Meridian, you're dealing with small startups to large corporate enterprises. What are some of the challenges across the board perhaps you're seeing?
Yeah, so generally we've seen a pretty resilient first couple of quarters, right? And that's because everyone moved up some of their buying, or they made the steps to try and insulate and insure themselves. But from top to bottom, regardless of whatever size of business you are, Chris, they're saying now is not the time to do anything big. We will pause and we will hold, right? Now, if you look at some of the big FIs, then you see folks starting to shed, which is what they generally do in times of uncertainty.
Explain that too.
Well, so I think TD came out with 2% of their staff that they moved on from, but for awareness, the big five are constantly going through that churn. They're constantly reducing their workforce, and then they'll start to hire and they talk about that all the time, but they are constantly in a state of renewal. But it's the one lever that they pull, of course.
It's a good time to do it, or excuse to make those moves.
Well, you never let a good crisis go to waste if you talk about strategy, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Let's talk about you.
Sure.
Born and raised.
I like to do that.
And, yeah, exactly. That's why you're here. Yeah. You're a Niagara boy through and through. Tell me sort of childhood memories of where you grew up and how you've maintained a proud Niagara representative, I'll say.
Yeah. You need a backstory for that. So Waynflete, yes, good people come out of Waynflete and are in Waynflete as per our discussion. So I am the oldest of 18 grandchildren on my mother's side. My grandfather was a dairy farmer, so a really big dairy operation. I have very vivid memories of walking out to the barn and seeing Grandpa buried up to here in a cow, right? It'll do something.
Born and raised on a farm, I get it.
It does something to your psyche when you see that.
Twitching with PTSD.
Chris, literally, it's here. Like I can pull it up at a moment's notice.
I was there in the stalls watching it all happen. Yeah,
and it's a very comforting. It's a very comforting memory, actually, since my grandfather's gone, and I resemble him very much, and all of his traits and all the things that make me awesome and shitty at the same time, right? I can track back to this one individual, but it was one summer in the Haymow with him that sounds like a great opportunity. That I said, "Oh, yeah, you need to go get your master's because this is not going to work for you, right? These are truly banker hands." And so I was the first one to, sort of leave and go to university, and the whole family, that was the first sort of thing. I've always had a pull to bigger city, love the country and for all the nice things, but don't like it for all the limiting factors. So that's sort of early childhood. what pulled me, I was at Mac I did my undergrad, did my master's there. What pulled me back to Niagara was just really a great opportunity at then Niagara Credit Union, and that's what brought me back here. My heart, I think now that I'm, on the other side of 50, you start to reflect and get all sappy on that stuff. I think my heart's sort of always been here. But I still enjoy the big city. I enjoy doing that. I'm in Toronto quite a bit for work now. But it's nice to come home.
It's great. Mm-hmm. What are some of the experiences early on in your career that shaped you as a leader today? Or shaped your leadership style?
I think leadership style is based on who you are as an individual, so I'd always take it back to that, right? It's not really shaping a style. I don't think anyone can put on a style. I think it's part of who you are.
Yeah.
So to answer, to reshape the question, it would be, what has shaped you to be the individual you are today? That means that here's how you lead and look at things and coach and do all of that sort of stuff. So really, really early days, I remember, and it's funny because I'm reflecting on this now. My son has just joined a team in Niagara. I won't say which team it is, but he's joined a nonprofit in Niagara. And he's the only male on the team.
Really?
Which I think is very, very cool. And I was able to say, look, hey, we actually do have something in common, even you think you and your dad have nothing in common. I was the only male on a big team when I joined Niagara Credit Union. That was back in 1998. I've been there. I just celebrated 28 years. And I joined because they had an opportunity for somebody to come in and train on their banking system. You probably won't remember, but in 2000, the lights and everything were going to go off, right? This Y2K thing, and lots of vaguely. That's right. You were just worried about your video games shutting down.
Yeah, I think I was 17. So, yeah.
And so I joined the credit union. I joined a team there, and I was the only male. And I was very motivated, wanted to grow, just came out, was doing an MBA, all of that sort of stuff. And by the way, I was, at that time, I had very strong opinions, and, I was, always right.
Yeah, and that's different from now, right?
At that time, right? Like I had very strong opinions, and I was
sure you know everything when you're young,
and I was going to tell you, and so that experience really did shape, right? So I got and I'm still friends with some of the colleagues that were in that room when I joined, but I think had it not been for that experience of occasionally getting set straight, right, on how the world actually worked. Now, there was some on the opposite side, too. I remember not being treated very well because I had different ideas.
You probably deserve most of it.
But I deserved most of it. There were some where I could say, hey, no, actually, I was right on that one. But that sort of shaped early days. And then, what sort of kept me at the credit union is, every time I was looking for something, bigger, broader, opportunities seemed to come. And, I've had some of my colleagues say, yeah, but, you had to be ready for those opportunities. And I was, and when we talk later about advice, that's one key piece is that, there's one thing to want opportunity. You also have to be ready for opportunity, and sometimes there means some sacrifice that has to go with that, which is a bit challenging. When I talk to my kids today, who are 24 and 21, they don't understand this sacrifice thing. But there was that. So I remember very clearly at the time that the credit union was a really patriarchal culture at the leadership level. So lots of old white guys in leadership, and very patriarchal. And I remember there was an interaction. I just joined the branch leadership team, and it was so trivial at the time, but they had this branch manager leadership golf tournament, and only the branch managers were able to go to this golf tournament. And I said, this kind of stinks a bit, right? We shouldn't be doing this. We should be opening
not
this.
Too inclusive, right?
And yeah, it's not very inclusive at all. We should be more inclusive. And I remember their response was, "Okay, rookie," and they actually laughed at me in the meeting.
Really?
Right? And fast forward, I think it would have been 6 months. 3 of that 4 were thanked for their service in the organization and moved on. And
Wow.
things, karma always catches up, right?
I agree.
It always catches up. Another one I remember that I had to, really young leader, but had to stand my ground when I was asked to take one for the team. As a young branch manager, somebody wanted to dump their problem child, right? And I said, "Yeah, I'm not taking your problem child."
This is coming from another branch.
Yeah, I'm not, and tried to, but it was the actual my leader who wanted me to take the problem child, and I had to say, "Look, here's what I'm accountable for, and yeah, I'm not going to do it." Right, I just can't do it. That's not going to fit here. I had my case as to why I wouldn't do it, but it took courage to stand up, and I remember, pit in the gut of my stomach, right?
For sure.
It was. At the end of the day, once it went up the line, they couldn't force me to do that. I knew I had burnt a bridge with Leader, and thankfully, Leader was thanked for his service as well, right? Not too long thereafter. So, I think again, when aberrant behavior is surfaced, maybe this is the learning. When aberrant behavior is surfaced, if you're certain that it's aberrant behavior, then that's a good thing, right? It could have been a risk. I could have been elbowed out and been done.
You're putting these at risk.
Absolutely, put myself at risk. So, in anyone's career progression, anyone that doesn't say that, that luck played a part in their career progression, bullshit. It certainly did. Yes, you can do all of the things and the fundamentals to make yourself ready for and work hard and make sure you're a good strategic thinker. But there's also timing and karma and luck that comes into all of that.
The perfect storm in many ways.
Absolutely.
So when you were watching some of these sort of bad actors, did that give you a lot of excitement and hope for a longer, more robust career path with Niagara Credit Union? As you could see, hey, they're not tolerating some of the things that they perhaps used to. Like, what was the change as well?
That's an interesting question. Probably not, but not in the moment. Right, not in the moment. It was another one. Like, if this is the shit I'm going to have to deal with, do I need to be here? Right,
it's a long line of that to come.
Yeah, but the good thing is, our former CEO Sean Jackson was a wonderful man, and again, like in any big organization, some things happen that never surface, right? It's, if it isn't as open in a culture, or you give too much trust and latitude, then some of this stuff will happen. So it's ensuring that stuff gets elevated in the right way, so that we're talking about transforming and changing culture, right? Which is really what it's about. Now, I shared a couple of examples, but I think, it was probably, my presence was probably more impactful by the positive things I was doing, and that gave me the cred to be able to say, this one doesn't feel right and this needs to be fixed, right? Yeah. So, I don't want to create a whole bunch of people running into their boss's offices saying, this isn't right, I don't like. No, like, you've got to have a firm foundation.
There's a balance.
You got to be able to say and be able to talk with, okay, I've established myself, here's what I stand for, the type of leader and producer I am, and these things are all doing great, but we got to work on this, and we've got to, this is something that needs some attention. But what's really kept me at Meridian for 28 years is I'm passionate about the work that we do. I'm passionate about the people, right? And that'll come into my advice if we chat about it later for young people today. But it's a key ingredient to anyone's success.
Yeah, and it's a long day if you're not enjoying the work and what your company stands for. The most recent, I'll say, an incredible promotion was to COO. So, what's a day in the life of a CEO? What do you do, Wade? I know you probably get that a lot.
Yeah,
but walk me through this.
I spend a lot of time in meetings, right? I spend a lot of time. Whether it's project meetings, it's we have our strategic initiatives that I'm on steer coast for. So my world right now at Meridian So I have all of our lines of business. I have our back office operations that support those lines of business. I have our credit card, I have our contact center, and then I have our facilities group. So it's a really broad portfolio, and I have fantastic leaders that are my next level down that run those pieces of the business, right? So it's less about the details and the operational pieces and more around the strategic elements of that. But I remember even when I was early days as chief member service officer, so just when I had a chunk of the sales, my young son said, what do you do every day? Do you just talk? Like,
it's not wrong.
Yeah, well, I do talk a lot.
Yeah.
And then, hit COVID, I talked all day, right? That's what I talked all day. But it's ensuring that I'm focused on integration, on moving the organization forward from a sales perspective. I mean, that's my world is the sales world. So I'm the chief sales guy, and ensuring that organizational resources are appropriately allocated there and focus, on the business. The good, the bad, and the ugly. And there's lots of all of those three buckets. The other piece that oddly enough, in let's say formative years, which wasn't that long ago, was less than 5 years ago or just after 5 years, but I did a 2-year stint as our chief people and culture officer as well, and people who know me sort of gave me one of these, right? Seriously?
What are they doing?
Yeah. Are you like, where is there a camera here? There's a camera
I'm
here.
about to get punked.
Yeah. But it was. I reflect on that time. It was really constructive in my development because I was able to see a whole other side. Now, again, not a life HR professional by any means. The number of times that I would sort of say, "You've got to be friggin' kidding me! Like, that happened? Really? Somebody did that?" So I'm in the right spot where I am, which is leading our salespeople that are out front, the ones that you need to be passionate about what we're doing, why we exist. And one of the strengths in our organization is the front line are just incredible people, right? Aside from, and we call it sales, but it's really around providing our members the advice that they need to have their best life. And what they continue to give back to community in all of our branches across the entire province, and there's 90 of them. They're just fantastic people, right? And that keeps me really excited about doing the job that I do. And there of course are some crappy long days, and lots of chief executive meetings around strategy and board and all of that sort of stuff, which I love. I'm in lots of meetings, and I talk a lot, as my son would say.
That's great. It's been cool to knowing you for probably 20 years almost now, and just being able to watch your career path evolve. And I think to an organization, the value of someone that's seen from branch level and work their way through so many different roles, that you can't bring that outside. Someone that's been through all of the culture changes, the growth. And I mean, I will say as a client of Meridian, and just being in the Niagara region now for more than I haven't been from Owen Sound, but you've maintained that community feel in so many different areas, at the branch level, in whether it's the name on the side of a huge sponsorship or the little things that are done on the micro level. And I can only imagine how challenging that must become as you continue to grow. But you've also been able to continue to add all of the value add services that put you competing against anyone else.
Yeah, I mean, your piece around organizational knowledge. So 28 years of organizational knowledge, but I want to, that can be both a good thing and a bad thing, right? I have to check myself quite often. Am I looking back too much as opposed to looking forward? Because our space is going to transform significantly, and over the next 5 to 10 years, and I need to remember what got us here is not going to get us there. So it's the knack is to be able to pull the right pieces out of that, Chris, and saying, yep, that's endearing. That one lives. We can keep those pieces, but also understanding the stuff that probably you've needed to outgrow and move on from.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah.
You, Wade, have been, let's say, known as a straight shooter. I think that's a really nice way of putting it. When has this, I'll say, bit you in the ass?
Oh, so many times, right? It's, I'm a good colleague of mine years ago said, you can't change a dog into a cat.
Great point. Yeah,
it's a great point.
Yeah.
Go back 10, 15 years, probably something I really struggled with, right? Because, so here's the scene, right? I'm 6'4", very strong opinions, big booming voice, walk into a room, I can intimidate the shit out of people. Right?
Agreed.
And that's my challenge. The other thing is, I don't suffer fools lightly, right? So if we're in a relationship and I know your intentions are good, I got all the time in the world and I'll soften it, right? But if my senses go off that you're only out for yourself or there's something else at play, like I just don't do that well. I don't do that well now. It was even worse 15 years ago, right? I've mellowed
Usually it's the opposite. People get like less tolerant. Their bullshit meter goes.
In that piece, I'm getting, maybe it's more savvy. I'm getting more tolerant and more savvy as it relates to that. But yeah, I've had to work really hard at making sure. Well, first of all, my number one rule is I've got to be in a relationship. I have to make sure that I am in relationship with someone that I'm going to work closely with, because then they will know what's just Wade and what's, like, look at his face. Because here was a defining story for me. I was at one of those leadership seminars, courses, where they, and I say this respectfully for all the leadership development people, but they put you into one of those stupid exercises where they line you up on across from each other. And your goal is that you have to try and persuade the people on the other side to come over to your way of thinking in one of those games,
gotcha,
right? It's a survival game or whatever the case may be. And I remember sitting there going, this is stupid. Like, I can't stand this. I was just in a bad mind space.
Not into it. No.
Yeah, no, not into it. And, I held out for a little bit to make it look like I was in the game, and then I just went over to the other side, right? That's where everybody was going. Like, put me out of my misery. And this co-participant came up to me and she said, I felt so bad for you because, you could tell on your face that this was really challenging you and really bothersome for you to make this decision, right? And in my head, I'm like, okay, Wade, take note, because, like, you checked out, you didn't give a shit.
Yeah, you weren't thinking that.
But what you see here, so people that know me really well, I mean, people that I've worked with for years, my team sometimes calls it resting Wade face, right?
That's amazing.
I have a resting Wade face, but it's because I'm processing and I'm thinking, when I'm thinking and processing something, and I might be somewhere else. So I have to really focus in those moments to say, make sure you're back here. Now my team will call me on it and say, Wade, what's this mean? Like, what's the look on?
We noticed.
And I'm like, no, nothing really big. It's just, for whatever reason, it's really demonstrative. I critique myself now if I look at, and when I watch this, I'll look at myself and I'll say, like, you look mean. Like, why do you look so mean? And I'm not trying, and I'm really, like, I'm enjoying myself. This is great, but that's how I I'm
self-conscious 50% of the time.
Yeah.
It's like, a great awareness piece, though.
But then I got to a point where I said, like, again, can't change a dog into a cat. This is what I've got. So I'm not going to have a softer, gentler face. I am not going to have a softer, gentler tone. And so I need to build a relationship with people so that they know what I'm about and what it means and what it doesn't mean, more so.
Yeah.
Right?
Especially those that are more sensitive, and I'll put myself in that category, more sensitive to, that type of reaction or response, because that can be devastating, and some people take that away for 3 days going, oh, Wade's mad at me.
Well, that's it.
What did I do?
So what's the key learning here, right? Self-awareness is really important. So I know this about myself, right? This is who I am. I'd be lying if I said sometimes I didn't use it to my advantage. I'll use it to my advantage sometimes, right? Right? But I don't have to look stern and be stern. I present as a stern individual. Like, it's a Clint Eastwood get off my lawn thing, right? That's just who I am, and it's not going to change. right?
Yeah, for sure.
Not going to change.
I think, I love what you said about just once letting people sort of behind the curtain to know, hey, this is me. And I think, again, the people that understand that side know that, hey, I just be aware of this, but behind that, there's a big teddy bear.
And that's the thing. People that know me know that that's truly the case, right? And giving permission to say, okay, time out. I'm like, what's this? Am I reading this correctly?
It's incredible.
And so that's really important in any relationship, that you set those, apply it at home if you want, right? And I can tell you, so my wife and I, same things, right? She's like, I'd have to really work on, this is what my reaction is and what it isn't, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
You've been quoted, no one owes you anything. Tell me about that. And maybe let's talk about it in the context of people getting into their career, either with your organization or not. Do you feel that younger people have a greater sense of entitlement now than perhaps you getting into the workforce?
So Wade processing on how he presents this.
I also asked like 3 questions into one question.
So he doesn't get misinterpreted as being, Clint Eastwood, get off my lawn.
You're smiling, so that's good. Yeah.
So first of all, entitlement it goes into that bucket of I just have no time for. When I sense and feel it's something I can't get beyond. Do I think that today's youth are more entitled than I was? I can say, yeah, I didn't feel entitled, and that goes back to my roots story, right? I was farming community, felt I needed to get out. I carved my own path, right? Because there was no one there to help carve it for me. Neither of my parents went to university and did all that stuff. They were going to be in Waynfleet and do that stuff, and God bless them, for the work that they did, but that's not the work that I wanted. So I was not going to be looking there for any sort of guidance and here's what you need to do. Right?
Nor were you getting a handout.
No, nor was I getting a handout. I left home for first year university, and I never came back. Like, and I know my mom at the time was like, oh geez, like you're not even coming home for the summer? Yeah, no, I'm not. I'm getting a summer job here, and it was formative in my career and opened the doors that it did for me.
For sure.
So I think that's part of it. But youth today, and we were chatting a little bit before, but I got married at 24. I bought a house at 25. If you wonder why kids and youth this generation might feel a bit entitled, is it sucks for them right now, right? And
call a spade a spade. That's what it is.
It sucks. My kids, 24 and 21, they're not going to be buying a house unless Dad's buying it.
How much was your first house?
First house was $250,000.
How much were you making at the time, if you don't mind sharing?
$35,000 was my first contract at the credit union.
So when you run the numbers, again, it's not the same anymore.
No, it's not the same. It's not the same. So when you read all kinds of things about, well, this isn't really important to this generation. Owning a house and owning a car, that's not really important to them. Well, of course it isn't, because it's not affordable. So
you just can't do it. Yeah.
So why would you say this is really, really important to me and know that it's not attainable? So something's got to change there. I will say though, and this wasn't just with this generation. This happened, perhaps a generation before. But I remember when we were talking about our employee engagement results and all of those pieces, and new young people coming in. When I joined, I can remember being in my first role with the credit union, and we were doing our systems conversion, and I was there on Christmas Eve until it was like 9:00, right? Because we had a deadline. It was a tech piece, and I was there.
It was going to get done.
It was going to get done. I was there, right? It's not happening today, right? That's just would not be happening generally. And again, listeners, I'm making a very broad general statement. I know there are some folks that go above and beyond and are like that, but there doesn't seem to be that same drive to do whatever it takes. I felt, and maybe it was me, but I felt I needed to do whatever it took to achieve, at the expense of lots of other things, right? my kids today are not willing to do it at the expense of other things. I remember talking to, and again, this was a few years ago, but, my daughter said, she's going to shoot me if I tell this story. I'm going to tell it anyway because she's well established. But I'm like, okay, well, are you work? She said, well, they've scheduled me like all 5 days next week. She was a summer job. They scheduled me all 5 days, and I'm not working that much in a row. Like I'm not doing that. How dare they? Yeah, no, she was literally offended. I'm like, you got to be kidding, right? You've really got. You're like, you've got to be kidding. What have I done wrong? But it's the way that they view the world. They have very different priorities, and hey, that's okay. Who's to say they don't have it right? Right? They've got their own challenges. It's perspective, and again, every time I talk like this, again, I'm still the Clint Eastwood, get off my lawn, and pops into my head, and I don't want to be that guy, but we have to acknowledge that different responses from the workforce today are a result of a different environment.
I would agree. Do you think it's possible to achieve a career path similar to yours without having the sacrifices that you made and without putting, not necessarily the hours, the commitments that you did over the years?
I think it will be few and farther between because folks are programmed today that if it's not what I like, then I'm going to be empowered and I'm going to move, right? Like I remember, reflecting on 28 years, it wasn't all sunshine and puppy dogs by any means, right? I look back on some experience now and go, what the hell? Why did I stay?
Sure. How did I tolerate that?
Why did I stay for that? But I did. And, I'm glad that I did. Glad that I did because it's, I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. Because I was passionate about ultimately. At one time I interviewed outside, and it's actually a pretty good story. I was meeting with the board. I was that close. I was meeting with the board. And something clicked. I'm like, no, you know what? This place is worth fighting for. Like this, and I pulled out of the process, and fought my words. And I'm glad that I did.
Did you let them know at the time? No.
I shared that story when I celebrated 25 years in the organization, within our organization, right? I said I only looked outside once. But then because I felt this place was worth fighting for, and it really is from a culture perspective.
Appreciate you sharing that.
So I don't think that the same progression is going to exist for lots of young folks today. You don't hear about 28 years in one organization very much. I mean, we've got two employees in our organization that just celebrated 49 years.
Come on.
Yeah, they've been with our organization for 40.
What do you do for 50 years?
Yeah, like I'm like, okay, I'm hitting 50, and then you pull the chute.
Exactly.
Not me personally. I'm way before 50.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so I mean, you have to factor all that in, and I would really encourage, parents and others, like, you got to understand motivation drives response, right? And you got to understand what motivates, kids today is a function of the world that they're living in.
It's a byproduct of the times.
Yeah.
They're growing up, their parents, their family, the economy, whatever that might be. But I always say everyone's got a different currency, right? And we have to find what that is as leaders.
That's right.
Let's talk about mentorship. It's been something that you've been on the receiving end earlier in your career, and as you grew, and also something that you've been involved in helping mentor your team and others along the way. How important is that in just, I'll say, business nowadays?
Well, let me go back. I'll say very important, and then I'll share the story personally that really speaks to the power of mentorship. So, remember the scenario I created around the sort of real patriarchy, young guy coming in, new ideas. So I took over my first branch, and it was back, that would be back in early 2000s. And one of my challenges as a young professional was, again, strong opinions, rarely wrong, right? So I had all of the answers.
Of course.
And so I knew where I needed to go with this branch. It was a branch that wasn't performing as well as it needed to, and within a very short period of time, I had determined what I needed to do to fix it. And what I needed to do to fix it meant that I needed to, make some personnel changes. So fast forward a year, I had turned over 17 of 22 staff.
17 of 22 in 1 year.
In a year.
How popular were you?
Exactly. So this is my point, right? So there was blood on the floor. If I had not had a mentor and a strong advocate in my organization that had my back and was able to help smooth out some of the pieces for me, it could have been a very different story, right? For me personally, right? Now, all of the moves ended up being the right moves. We went from a bottom quartile branch to a top quartile branch, right? So it was the right way. It was the right path, the wrong way, right? Like I needed to slow the hell down and take more time and try and, maybe, so could I have won over some of those 17? Oh, absolutely. I probably could have, right? I didn't have the patience to say, I'm not waiting to see you turn. So that was a really important, as I reflect now from a learning perspective and try and share that guidance with young leaders that are going through that right now. So I think it's really important, but mentorship has to be, it's got to be a strong two-way street. So I've had a couple of relationships where I'm like, are you here because you really want to listen and learn, or are you just ticking a box, right? So I think it's important if you've got the right match. If you don't have the right match, then I actually think it can be detrimental.
Hey everyone, I got a huge favor to ask. If you're getting value from this podcast, tap that 5-star rating on Spotify or Apple. The more we grow, the more leaders and entrepreneurs we can help. Thank you for being a part of this. Now let's get started.
Who's been the most influential leader in your career?
So I have lots of folks that I have looked up to, tried to emulate. But I think the most powerful for me has actually been the anti-role model. And maybe that's just how I'm wired. But there have been a number of figures that I have either in my personal life or within my professional life that I have said, I'm not going to be that. Right. So role models can be both pro and anti is my message.
You just need to have the coffee with them.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. And it's, a lot of things saying, I'm not going to lead that way. That's not going to be what I want my legacy to be, all of that sort of stuff. Right. And I'm not going to go too deep, but there's both some on the personal side and there's some on the,
you don't want to name them all out
on the professional side. Well, I could, but as you probably know, most of them probably know already because
they've seen that face so many times.
They have. On the personal side, they definitely know, but it's a different perspective.
Yeah, I think that translates to work experiences. I often tell people it's like if there's an opportunity. My nephew recently, he's 21. He's finished his third year of media. He worked for me last summer, which was incredible. And I kind of said like, hey, it's probably best to go out and get something on your own. And he recently just took more of a sales role. But I'm like, buddy, you're going to either learn something that you like and have more interest in, or that you hate and don't want to do again. And that alone, to your point, is sometimes the best experience as well.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. So I mentioned earlier that my son, he's got an internships here in Niagara. And you know how I found out about it?
How?
He said, I've got this interview. I'm like, okay, so the one currency Dad has in Niagara is actual, some influence.
Social capital, come on.
And you didn't even, Dad didn't even make a call. I mean, I'm really proud of.
Was that on purpose?
Well, no, because he didn't want Dad to make.
Well, that's what I mean. It was intentional. Yeah, he's like, I'm doing this on my own.
Yeah, he did not want Dad to make the call. Now maybe that says more about him than it does about me, but I'm proud of him for doing that, right?
That's awesome.
Yeah. Now, if he'd be as open to spending his own money as opposed to spending my money, goes in the. It's not consistent thinking.
He's got lots of time for that. How do you foster innovation in a long-established organization like Meridian?
that's a tough one. Because
not to mention bureaucracy and rules and guidelines. I mean, being as a huge financial institution, the second largest credit union first.
We're now number 3. There have been some mergers in the space, but yeah. And it's a tough one because any organization that says we have been successful because of our roots and how we do business and impact and our people and yada, 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 whatever it might be, makes it harder to move off of those key success factors that are things that you hold really dear, right? A real early example was in my career, credit union space used to be defined as a service culture. Like they would proudly say, we do not sell. We don't sell things here. The banks sell things. Used car dealers sell things. We service. But what they were leaving on the table was because they weren't being proactive in their outreach to our members, means they weren't meeting needs, right? And so it was one of the real early cultural transformations we needed to undertake on the sales side within our branches. That is, and the example I used to use is, look, and to try and give some comfort would say, one of the mantras that I would use is, look, I want to be really clear. If you sell something to one of our members that they don't need, that's a quick exit for you, right? So we won't have any of that. But if, because you don't want to sell, you don't talk to, at that point in time, there weren't mobile payments and all that sort of stuff, but if you don't have the discussion with a member about a credit card and they're stuck on the side of the road and they don't have a credit card, then have you really done your job as a financial advisor and looking after their financial well-being? And the answer was clearly no, right? But, I think to get back to your question, the challenging part is, innovation now is, especially in the financial services space, is really, really challenging, right? Because everything becomes a commodity as soon as it hits. The Big Five do it.
For sure.
It's there, right? And you're expected to keep up. We'll never, as a smaller financial institution, we'll never be a leader on lots of the technology and all of the cool stuff. They're throwing millions and billions of dollars at that, right?
You can't compete.
So we've got to be really clear about what we're strategically focused on, and we're doing some really exciting things in the digital space as we move forward, because we need to, in the next 10 years as a financial institution, every year we see our branch transactions decrease. So it's a different world, and Gen Z expects a different advice model, and they don't care if they're walking into a branch first of all, they want to go into a branch when they want to go into a branch. They don't want to be made to go into a branch to do something. And so you've got to be able to provide service.
Or around your hours, for that matter.
Well, that's right. And so really looking at, sort of virtual sales and service models in the wave of the future. But, every year for the last 10 to 15 in-branch transactions have been dropping 10% a year, right? Yeah. And I say this really respectfully when I talk to my teams that are out in branches, and they're like, well, what's the future going to be? Are we going to have tellers? And I'm like, well, who's doing your teller transactions today? And they'll paint a picture and they'll say, well, they're generally folks, our members that are a little bit older, 70 plus. And so, okay, well, tell me what happens in 10 years.
I mean, give them 20, but yeah.
Well, it depends on where you are in that bucket, Chris. But
numbers,
if you're at this end of the bucket, like it's going to solve itself. My mom is mid-70s. She uses digital now, right? I never thought she would. She was one of those, I got to have my passbook and my statement people. I'm like, real change does happen. And that's gonna change the model. And so, we're spending a lot of time understanding where we need to innovate and where we need to play, because to your point, you can't do it all. So you got to be really strategic about where you're focused. But again, I think the adage around what got us here is not going to get us there. Like, you've got to buy into that, and you got to keep poking and make sure that innovation is not just somebody's side of the desk thing. You need dedicated people that are focused on pushing that stuff through the organization, right?
Absolutely.
Continuing to raise it.
Speaking of innovation, you can't go a day, if not an hour, without some sort of conversation around AI and the tools and the resources and like exponential compounding effect of what is predicted to be the largest amount of change that the world potentially has ever seen in a very, very short amount of time.
Get off my lawn, right? Like I've got another one of those moments coming.
But for you, like, let me speak from experience. I flirt between the line of super excited and crazy optimistic to also the other side of that going like there's moments of fear. There's things that scare me as far as like potentially not keeping up. How does this impact people? Like what are you thinking about personally, and how does Meridian handle?
Yeah, so at Meridian we recognize that AI really is a transformative game changer and leveler for us, right? It drives out non-value add work. So as an example at Meridian right now, I mean, we're really focused on, using Copilot for meeting summaries, and, I as an executive are using it to summarize documents for me. And,
Great.
Our CEO is really beating the drum around AI, and because you have to, it's got to be front of mind all the time, and it'll be reflected in all of our strategies as we move forward. But it's, you really need to make sure that you're focused on the right interactions and is this something that I need to be doing? Do I need to write this email or this letter to a client, right? She's made statements like, no one should be writing a letter here anymore. You should be using Copilot to write, and she's right, right? So, but that said, even for me, who is very, very open to that, my first wire is to start hammering it out myself, and then to go, like, I have to continue to remind myself that there's a better way. So what excites me is there is a better way, and looking at in our business, loan adjudication, all of those pieces, there are lots of really exciting pieces that generative AI is going to bring to the industry, and you're seeing them.
Yeah.
And so being open to that. And we're going to be delivering some stuff to our members via our digital app. We're focused on, we have a digital first strategy, which doesn't mean that you don't have people. It means that people are doing different things, right? What scares me around the AI and all of that piece, I'm constantly saying to my kids that will say, well, they'll make a statement, ABC, and I'm like, where did you read ABC? Well, I read, I was on TikTok. It was a post.
Say TikTok, yeah.
Like, that is so scary. And there was a recent study around some of the biggest disruptions. And one of them is going to be that we as a people are going to have a problem understanding what is real. So how do you discern now if this is actually true or not? This is one of the disruptions that they are concerned about in our world. Fast forward, 10 to 15 years. How are you going to be able to discern if something you're reading is correct? I mean, look at the AI stuff around. Some of my favorites right now are when they're doing the post NHL games, and they've got, he's talking, which is clearly not what the player is saying, and he's being very detrimental. But like, that's scary stuff. We see it in fraud, right? There are instances in fraud where, they're cloning people's voices. And so when you're talking to someone, if you're a senior, you may be not as close to this grandchild, and, there's
little Bobby calls up looking for money.
They sound like them, right? Like, that's scary shit that you always have to question what's real. That's the piece that scares me a little bit.
Yeah, I think through any big disruption like that we've seen, there's good, and there's also an equal amount of bad and corruption that can come. But
use the force for good, Luke.
Yes. Exactly.
Use it for good.
We'll see what comes of that.
Well, what do you think?
I think, I made an announcement to our team yesterday, and I kind of said, like, guys, we are, as an organization, I want everyone here to use this on the daily and have a sticky note, old-fashioned, that says AI. And things like collaboration. We're bringing people in to do educational sessions on like how to prompt, what tools. So I'm trying to make it as a culture to say, let's bring this in, not be scared of it. there's so many things. The one question I had was how many people here have mundane tasks that they're doing on the daily that they don't love or enjoy doing? It was everyone. So if that becomes just the easy wins to find efficiencies there, do more of the work that as an organization and individuals we like and probably we're best at, I'm going to double down on that.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that works when getting rid of as long as that individual's whole job isn't mundane tasks, right?
For sure.
Because that's when people get threatened. Yeah.
And you can't hide from the fact that there's large organizations that are shedding workforce not just because of optics, because of AI agents and technology that's doing that. So I think it's just something we all, as leaders, we have to be aware of and as informed as best we can. Yeah. But it's noisy.
Yeah, we're still going to need people, right? But people are going to be doing different jobs, and so that does, that's not current structure agnostic. Yeah, there'll be roles are going to change, but roles have always changed.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, people used to come in and they used to write deposits on ledger cards, like, come on, handwritten before computers. And this is the same thing that people talked about when computers came in, or ATM machines, or a while back, self-scanners at the grocery store, right? It's going to
it's taken over the world. I mean, how long has e-commerce has been in play? That's for 25 years, right? We still go to stores and shop and buy things. So
that's right.
I'll double down on that for sure. One of the cool ones that someone showed me last week, and I'm sure many have heard of it, but Notebook LM. Just Google Notebook LM, put in a body of text, a website, a 25-page PDF, and it'll give you a podcast format in like 2 minutes that you can listen to on the way
is that
home.
what we're doing now?
Thanks
for your prompting questions.
I don't
even do them yourself.
I only needed like 5 minutes of you for this, but again, just like great tools that can make your life easier, and it can be really fun too.
Well, here's 2 examples. So colleagues of mine, one was father was ill and had the following symptoms, and she plugged into the symptoms into, I think it was Claude AI.
Yep.
Said, here are the symptoms, what could this be? And it spit back 4, and it was one of the 4 when the person was diagnosed.
It's incredible.
So, so there's that one. What was the other one? I had another one too.
My wife as a doctor hates that, by the way, but that's a good...
I can imagine, but I mean, it's better than just going on the internet.
That's a great case where they found it,
and reading things. Oh, and the other example is I have a colleague that I work with that travels a lot, and they go on these massive, whether it's a safari or trips to Europe, and they plugged in, build me an itinerary for the following places. Where do I need to go? What do I need to see? And it spits out this beautiful itinerary, right? Now, so if I'm a travel agent, I'm saying, ooh, like this is scary for me.
How do you add value to that?
That's right. So maybe we won't have travel agents in the future because AI is driving it. Who knows? Those people are going to be doing something else. So anyone who buries their head in sand, it's not going to impact specific industries. Come on, like it is, right? But that's been the way of the world for a long, long time.
For sure. Yeah, the writing's on the wall. I mentioned earlier the community component of Meridian. I think that's something really special and unique. And not ever once have I got the impression that you have to do the things you do. Maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you've set an example as a community leader, someone that's not just making the donations and contributing because of the situation Meridian is in, but that's a core value and belief of the organization as you as a leader. How do you maintain that as you've grown over the years? Because it's not easy to do.
No, and I can tell you at this stage in my career, there are Friday night events where I'm saying, I'm not going to that one. Right?
You put your time in too.
Whereas before I was out 3 or 4 nights a week. It was much easier for me because as I shared earlier, community and giving back and contributing is in our DNA. So when something's in your DNA, it's really hard to shake, right? And so, anyone who is in our organization quickly learns that this is an expectation of how we operate as an organization, and it's what makes us special. It's also what's reinforced by our community partners about what makes us special. So it's not just us telling them; they see the real impact, right? They see what the impact that they're having. One of my leadership lessons has always been you have to walk the walk. And so when I was out investing my time, that's exactly what it was, right? It was both for me and because I received enjoyment, but I needed to walk the walk for people to see that, I'm here. It's, because, how many times have you been somewhere, there's a say-do gap and, we need to do this, and you go out and senior leadership are nowhere to be found. For sure. Senior leadership needs to be there.
It's a reflection of the culture.
It's an absolute reflection of the culture. And it also helps me, to connect with people further down within our organization that I may not see on a daily basis. And you get some good nuggets sometimes there that helps you to understand if there's something going on or not, right?
Yeah, that's awesome. You guys have done, I'll say, a community leader in that.
Thank you.
Can you share about the employee matching program? Because it's a special piece, and I'll put my Niagara Golf Marathon hat on. We've been a recipient of a lot of funds over the years, and we've had a ton of Meridian.
Yeah, I know. I keep seeing them come in. I'm like, that damn
Sinclair's
tapping our account again.
It's for the kids, all right?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's good. So when you talk about making sure that people are focused on community, you also then have to talk. You have to walk the walk, and talk the talk with both resourcing and and enabling that in your organization. So our employee matching program, enables employees that are committed to and involved with these events to be able to get matching donations for anything that they raise. Right. So if they're out raising whatever it is, 15, and again, I should know this. I don't know the actual personal limits for each one of them.
It's a good amount.
Yeah, it's a good amount. But it allows people that it shows that their company is backing what they're it's a tangible demonstration by the organization that we believe in giving back to community and what you're doing, right? That you're able to do that. So it's been very well used across our entire organization.
Yeah. Oh, it's incredible. It sets the tone for your team, and it keeps the bar raised high for the rest of Niagara and the communities you guys are in too.
Yeah, and when we go back, I think you asked it earlier. I want to make sure that this major AI script. So, when we're talking about community, and advice for young professionals today, here's my simple advice: for God's sakes, do something.
Get involved.
Do something, because far too often, I don't know exactly what it is that has severed, the giving back to community versus the balance of, well, how will this impact my personal time, right? So that shift happened within society over the last little while, and. We've talked about entitlement earlier. I don't think it's entitlement. I just think that, the younger generations today are much more protective of their time. Maybe it's from watching their parents who did silly stuff like work until Christmas Eve like I did. Again, maybe who's to say that they're
people
not
seeing
right.
what they don't want to do, right?
Right. Yeah, that's right. Could be the anti-role model thing for sure. But that doesn't mean you do nothing. Find something that you're passionate about, because if you think that your work is going to be as fulfilling or family is going to be as fulfilling or all of those pieces, community, giving back, making an impact is part of that triangle for me, right? You need to find something that you can be passionate about outside of necessarily work or other pieces, because you need to be passionate about all three, but you can't have one without the other. It's called about personal fulfillment.
Yeah, for sure. And at the darkest of moments, or when people are lost, I've always said it's work out, eat some vegetables, but go and volunteer and serve a meal and get a tour of the Ronald McDonald House, or go down to community care and help their team. And there is nothing more grounding and humbling than, it's one thing to cut the checks. It's amazing to have that opportunity. You need those people, but to go and be, boots on the ground and seeing the recipients, there is nothing more humbling.
Do you remember my previous concept and word that I like? It's called perspective, right? When you see have-nots, then you're able to compartmentalize your challenges, be grateful, be thankful for what you have. Versus if your focus is only in the mirror and the things that you're doing, you don't have perspective. Yeah. You have your little world. So you have to really, to understand the world, you have to be out in the world to do that, right? So my advice, find something. And for young professionals, there's no better way to build your network. You know,
I was just going to say that.
Like community is, so this is the part that scares me, right? When I look at my kids and others, their community is here. And so I don't so I'm holding up a phone, right? It's here on their phone. And so something needs to shift. If you're community groups, nonprofits, whatever, you've got to make sure you're not being in this community, for the younger generation, because if you're going to get missed, because that's where they're getting their sense of community from today and what's driving them. So you got to make sure you're relevant and that you're staying on the platforms that they're on.
Yeah, meet them where they're at.
Yeah, that's right.
So true. What are you most excited about for your kids? Maybe, or what are you most scared of? You tell me. Which one do you want to answer, Wade?
It is, well, I mean, I'll say this, I'm more excited than you are right now, given my age and stage of my kids. 24, 21, they'll be 25 and 22 this year. My daughter's a kindergarten teacher. She's found her way to give back, and let me tell you, any of you parents that have kindergarten age teachers or kindergarten age kids, you better be, you should be bringing those teachers lunches for all of. My wife's also a kindergarten, so I have 2 kindergarten teachers in the house right now.
Amazing.
Like I put anything down, it gets laminated. It's crazy. Awesome. It's you see the challenges with children, and I see it through their eyes. But I'm really proud of her because she decided this is what she wanted to do, and like she's a good teacher. She wants to teach for the right reasons.
That's awesome.
And when people are talking about, and by the way, I'm not a big union person. I've never been. But when I look at the amount of money that my wife and now my daughter, who is not, she's got a 1-year contract, but she's not permanent yet, that she spends on her own dime on that classroom, it's shameful actually. But those, I think that's how you know that you've got a good teacher. Like they're putting their heart and soul into the stuff that they're delivering. They're there to make a real impact. So I'm really excited to see where she's going to go. My son is, just graduated from Western in a sort of social media, corporate comms, marketing type of thing. And so really, when your kids get to be that age, it's interesting to see them carve their own path, and how that's going to shape. But I'm always tying it back to what I was doing, which is both positive and negative at the time. Like I said, I'm married. I was married at 24, and my daughter now I kept beating into her head, like, you don't need to do this when you've got a 2 in front of your age. Like, you can do this when you get a 3. Yeah. Right? Like, live your life. You got lots of time. Sure. Live your life. So, I'm excited to see the contributions that they will make as good people. And they're both, I'm lucky. They're both really good kids. But the challenges they're going to have to, buying a house, affordability, they're living in a different world, right? It's, Bank of Dad is going to have to come to the table.
They're living under your roof for a while.
It's, here's the one lesson I have for any folks that might be my age with kids, right? So I said to my daughter when she got her job, and they're both living at home, and I said, I have one job left as dad to do for you, right? And that is, you've got to understand what it's like to live with real net income. Because right now I'm not charging her rent. She's not paying for her car. She's paying for her phone and her car insurance. And so I said, okay, here's the deal. You got to send me half of every paycheck. I said, I'll keep it for you. You're going to get it back, right? But you got to learn to live with what you got.
Yeah. Or else it's an absolute shock.
Oh, absolutely, right? To imagine have that much disposable income.
What do you mean bills cost this much?
Her first paycheck, she says, what is this? Like, look at all this tax. They took $1,000 in tax.
Welcome to the real world.
So I pulled up my payroll app and I went, take a look at this. Right? She's like, you got to be kidding. No.
Yeah.
But yeah, in your case, there's nothing better than seeing the world through children's eyes. I just hope that we as a society get our shit together over the next little while, and so that our kids can live in our communities and have, have the opportunities that you and I had in our communities. Because right now they don't have that without mom and dad. Recent CMHC study, 41% of first-time home buyers had a gifted down payment from mom and dad. 41%, and that average down payment was $75 to $100,000. So moms and dads out there, if you think you're getting away from this, you're not. Yeah. And so if you haven't opened a first-time home savers account and you're not funding it for your kids, then you're missing out on a great opportunity. Talk to your financial advisor and get some good advice. Pay me now or pay me later. Yeah. Right? There's a way you're going to need
for sure. And I mean, it's exciting when you run those numbers. I'm fortunate to be a very old dad, a late starter, but I mean, in a spot where I can do this and you run the numbers on small amounts early on, you can more than do that for your kids and help them not just with school, with a down payment. And I think that's a cool transition too, where some kids are, they might be going to trade schools or they might be, not doing, education is going to change so much in the next few years. So,
well, I wanted to make sure my kids came out of school with no debt. That didn't mean that they didn't contribute every year. I think it's really important that they do. Make sure they own it, right? So whatever the amount is, pick it, whether it's $5,000 or whatever the case may be, but make sure they're contributing.
Yeah, it's great advice. How do you disconnect from work? I know music's a big part of your life.
Yeah, I'm a big music guy. I have always been really blessed this way. I can leave work at work. Even during COVID, I could leave work in the basement. And I don't know why that is. I'm able to compartmentalize and do that generally. Sports is a big thing, but I think it's also being rounded, right? If work is your only thing, back to that community stuff and all of the other pieces, if work is your only thing, then work will be your only thing. Nobody, when you die, nobody that you worked with is going to be...
Die when you retire, no one's going to...
Well, that too, but so you've got to make sure that you're well balanced and you have other things that, that feed your energy. But I've always been blessed that way. I've been able to compartmentalize, including, being able to, when I'm on vacation, I'm on vacation. I also think it's really important for senior leaders to, if you say vacation is really important and then you hammer your people with respond to this when they're on vacation or you're on vacation, then, that's a say-do gap from my perspective. So it's, I take my vacation when I take my vacation. I love my job, which is helpful. So when I'm back, I'm back. I've been blessed to be able to shut down for whatever reason.
It's incredible. That's a podcast in itself.
There you go.
It's incredible. What are you most proud of in your 28 years at Meridian?
I think I'll reframe it to say what do I want to be remembered for. I want to be remembered for making a tangible impact on community and helping to develop people. I have again, with 28 years, you can see, I can see firsthand the people that I have had influence and impact on as they've moved through our organization. And that's really cool. Growth and development of my people would be a really close second, but I think it would be, did I make our organization in Niagara a better place? I think so, than when I joined it. And, and the other piece really proud of is just the resiliency of our business. There have been some really challenging times over the last 3 to 5 years, and back to our earlier discussion, I think we maintained our soul. And so in times of challenge, you can sometimes lose your soul. But I think from who we are as a good corporate citizen doing good, I think we've been able to maintain that. And so I'm really proud of the role that I had in that.
That's incredible. What advice would you give to 35-year-old Wade?
Slow the F down, right? So
why do you say that?
Well, just back to my example of early day, right? Yeah. You gotta slow down. Not everything has to happen based on the schedule that you concoct in your head when you are mid-20s, early 30s and think you have all the answers. That's the second piece. You don't have all the answers. You're not always right, really. I remember hearing that. I'm like, that's just what they say to young people that are really smart and
you're wrong.
And motivated, right? That's just someone being threatened. And the other piece is you do have to skin your knees. I used to hate hearing it. People would say, you got to skin your knees a few times before you're going to be ready for it. You absolutely do. Skin knees, skin elbows, skin face, right? you've got that helps to build character and humility. It also shows that if you're pushing hard enough, right? If you never skin your knees, then I would say to you, you're not pushing hard enough.
Yeah, and I think that's life itself. Is experience is the best teacher. You can read anything, someone can share anything, hear it from 20 people. I mean, mine most relevant one is kids, right? I mean, my dad for years, you're gonna have to change your life, and you'll see. But I'm like, you can't understand until you get in it
Kids
and live
suck the
it.
life right
They
out of you.
suck
I'm
the life
telling
out of
you.
It's like the most
I love them.
rewarding thing, and just the thing that sucks the life out of you.
Little suckers, yeah.
I agree. Do you ever see yourself fully stepping away? I mean, do you have I'm not going to say when are you retiring, Wade, but what's the next decade look like?
Yeah, I mean, I've always, so back to that, when I'm able to step away, I'm able to step away. My friends and colleagues have said, oh, you're never going to retire. You love what you do too much. But I'm telling you, when the numbers are where I want them to be, then yeah, it's time for me to go.
You're a smart man in the financial industry.
But, yeah, but it's not going to be, I've got enough to go and meet my needs and I'm still going to hang on, right? I also don't ever want to hang on and be that guy that hangs on too long. The key will be if it's no longer fun in the morning and I'm not passionate about what I'm doing, then that's time to go. I'm doing some work. I'm sure I'll do something. I'm doing my director's college right now through Mac.
Oh, right on. How do you like the program?
Yeah, I love the program. So I'll probably do some corporate board work at some point in time in my career. But I'm also really excited about living my life, not having to go to work every day. Some point in time, it gets you're starting to get there when you go on vacation and it's harder and harder to come back. Yeah. Right? I remember taking vacation early days. I was like, I hate vacation, and now it's hard. Now it's harder and harder. I'm like, I really like this. Yeah,
that's great.
Of course, I don't have a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old running around the house. So
work is the easy.
Good
part
luck.
Right now,
good luck with that.
Work is the break.
That's right.
How do listeners find out about Meridian? Obviously, getting to your website.
www.meridiancu.ca, or just ask me. I'm on LinkedIn. Send me a note. You want to see it? Connect. Happy to. But if you've got an address in the States, I'm generally ignoring those right now. So sorry about that. I'm pretty patriotic as well.
Love it.
And I'm doing business with people that I like to do business with that are fellow Canadians. But yeah, send me a message.
That's awesome. Wade, you've been super generous, not only with your time, but experience and advice, and I appreciate it. So thanks so much.
Appreciate it.